Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Hello, everyone. This is Katana Abbott, and I want to welcome you to Smart Women Talk. So today we are interviewing a returning guest, author Kathy Caprino, about her new book, The Most Powerful You, 7 Bravery-Boosting Paths to Career Bliss. So we're going to talk about why women need more bravery and how to make a meaningful difference in the world. We're going to talk about the 7 most damaging power gaps to prevent women from thriving at work and what contributes to how they were formed. Sure, we're going back to childhood here. Okay. And the first step to take if you want to make, an impact today, and leverage your talents in a more fulfilling and rewarding and successful way. When you have clarity, confidence, and focus, nothing can stop you. So today you're going to be able to hear Kathy Caprino's 7 Bravery Boosting Paths to Career Bliss. Doesn't that sound great? Make it easy, make it flow. So we're in for a great show, but first I do want to tell you a little more about Kathy. She's an internationally recognized career and leadership coach, writer, speaker, educator, dedicated to the advancement of women in business, a former corporate vice president. She has also trained as a marriage and family therapist, a seasoned executive coach, senior Forbes contributor, pretty awesome, top media source, and author of Breakdown, Breakthrough, and The Most Powerful You. That's the book we're talking about today, which is on HarperCollins. With her Finding Brave podcast and other key resources and services, Kathy's core mission is to support a Finding Brave global movement that inspires and empowers women to close their power gaps, create more impact, and make a difference in the world. I think this is fabulous, and I couldn't be happier to have you here today, Kathy. Thanks so much for being on the show again.
Thank you so much for having me. So good to reconnect.
So, I know you, but our listeners, the people watching, don't know you unless they have heard you speak somewhere. I'd like to know what happened to you, your story to put you on this path where you are today. Because there must have been something there that happened, in your childhood, early in your life, that really made you want, because I think you work a lot with women, you work in leadership. And I took entrepreneurship.
Right away, huh?
Yes, a corporate job, could not handle it, hated it. And so I've always been an entrepreneur, and I work with entrepreneurs, but it's so important to have women like you showing women in corporate how to take their careers to that next level. So was there something that happened when in your life that...
Yeah. So nobody's asked me quite that story, but I'll tell you kind of the trajectory. And I do want to say, Katana, that when I talk about career, I talk about entrepreneurs, consultants, private practitioners. I don't see that divide that other people talk about, just so you know. I'm talking about how you show up in the work that you do. But here's the story, and everything you said as the preamble really fits what I talk about. When I look at myself as a young person, there were important themes. For instance, even age 16 to 21, I was a competitive tennis player, went to the States in tennis. I loved psychology. My dad was a scientist, and the only thing he never got an A in was psychology. So he would say, "Oh, Kathy, you always want to get to the bottom of things." I loved psychology. I had a therapeutic ear too, even at a young age as a teen. Boys and girls would call and say, "Can I come over and talk?" And I'd say to my mom, "What's going on with this? I don't have the answers. I'm 16. I loved to write. I loved ideas. I was passionate about literature. So when you look at those dots, And I always talk about you want to connect. Steve Jobs said this. This isn't my brilliant idea, but you want to connect the dots of who you really are. And it's true, those natural talents. And I'm a singer. And so I've sung in front of, now lots of people, but back then thousands of people. So unfortunately, I bailed on all of those. When I went to college, Boston U, I studied English and I wanted to be an editor. I wanted to help brilliant authors launch their books. Well, I got out and, I come from a background, mom's Greek, dad's Italian. He's in heaven. Mom is still here, 96, and she recovered from COVID, unbelievably. But, it was all about kind of the safe, secure thing to do. So I took the first job that was offered to me, which was this crappy marketing job in publishing. And what happened is it sent me on an 18-year corporate trajectory where I was very successful on the outside, but not successful on the inside. So I made a lot of money and global initiatives, staff, big things. But I had bumps all along the way. And when I hit 40, those bumps turned into crises. Here they were. Things that you hear that other people face, but you don't think you will. Right. Sexual harassment, gender discrimination, chronic illness. Every 3 months for 4 years, I'd have an infection of the trachea, of all things. Toxic colleagues, narcissistic bosses before I knew what narcissism was. Again, zero work-life balance. The kids were little. I wasn't in the fabric of their life. But honest to goodness, worse than all of that was waking up saying, is this the work I'm going to be doing in the world? This meaningless, non-contributive work. But here's what happens when you don't make a move for yourself. I was 40 and made a lot of money, and I felt my family needed that. And what are you going to do when you don't know what to do? Right. Often you do nothing. Yeah. So one thing that happened to me is one of the senior leaders at this last VP job said, you're going to have a huge career here. Buy the biggest house you can, because we were in the market to buy a house. Well, I did. We did.
And this is at that job that you were stressing out about.
Yeah, the worst 2 years. So instead of getting out of that job, I bought a bigger house. 1 month after moving into that home was 9/11. And 1 month later, I was laid off in a way that seemed wrong, unfair. So Kathy snapped, and I did see a lawyer, and it ended up well for me. But what happened was, I'll make this as brief as possible. I'm sitting in my therapist's office crying.
No, it's very interesting. You don't have to rush.
Oh, thank you. I'm sitting in my therapist's office a week after, crying because the world I knew was gone. I was never going to return to that. Done. But what was I going to be? And he said, Kathy, I know from where you sit, this is the worst crisis you've ever faced. But from where I sit, it's the first moment you can choose who you want to be in the world. Now, who do you want to be? And now that I've been doing this work for 15 years as a career coach, you don't have the answer to that when you're stuck. If you had the answer, you would not be stuck. So I said, I don't know, I want to be you. And we laughed. I laughed. And he said, what does that mean to you? And I said, I want to help people, not hurt people and be hurt. And from that conversation, he said, I've known you. I think you'd make a good therapist. I became a marriage and family therapist. But as we all should know by now, there's no destination that ends and is written in stone. I worked with rape, incest, pedophilia, suicidality, drug addiction, and I learned what it is to sit with someone who's going through the darkest of human experience. And some of it that you don't understand and you might actually hate, like pedophilia. But if you're going to help someone, you have to find a way to connect. You have to find something in them that you love, that you can respect. It was so life-changing. But after several years of that, I'll never forget, client called me up and said, I'm going to kill myself now. I'm going to wrap my car around, I'm driving, I'm going to kill myself. And in that moment, in that, tiny little flicker of a second, I said to myself, this isn't it for me. This is not the final destination for me. I snapped out of it, helped her. She's doing better now. And I was studying coaching at the time. And what I would find is when professional women would come on my either therapy or coaching calendar, I was riveted by their challenges. And Katana, I would hear, so I've been doing this work 15 years. About 10 years ago, what I started to notice, and really 2 years ago, I really focused on it. What is happening that no matter where this woman is calling from, because I work around the world, no matter what level, no matter how much money she's making, I work with women making millions and people just starting out, no matter their education level, race, religion, they're bringing the same challenges over and over and over and over again. So what I asked myself 2 years ago was, what is it that these women are missing in their life that they are coming to coaching to help? And what are they getting in the coaching process that lets them have a breakthrough? And the answer is this book, which is Bravery and Power. What I see, now I don't mean to paint all women with the same brush, but when you work with thousands, and I have 900,000 followers on LinkedIn, I'm hearing from hundreds of people a month. When you see trends like this, it's research and it's valid. And then I did a quantitative survey, which I'll tell you about later. But what I'm seeing is women are lacking, and there are reasons for this. We don't come out of the gate like this. They're lacking the bravery to look at what is not working and take accountability to change it. And they're lacking the internal and external power to be change agents in their life. And so this survey that I did, Katana, 98% of the over 1,000 women who took this survey around the world have at least one of these 7 damaging power gaps. And over 75% have 3 or more. So this is the work that, right now, my life's work. How do we close these 7 gaps? Because if you have these gaps, you cannot thrive at the level you want to. And, there's one thing you mentioned that I'd love to push back on a little, and I don't think you're going to disagree. It's not enough to have passion and purpose. It's just not. If you don't have power in these areas, and I'm going to, if you're interested, walk through these 7 areas, you're not going to thrive.
Yeah, I would love to have you, walk through those. And, my focus is working with women with their money. And, that's, I've been a certified financial planner for 30 years. And when I was in my 40s, I felt what you were feeling, and it showed up physically too. And I think it does. It shows up a lot for women physically. Now, I wanted to mention to you this thing with the throat. That has to do with, your voice and being able to speak, but also choices.
Of course.
And sometimes, what you look at it and both choices are bad in your mind, right?
Then you get sick.
So you got that in your throat.
Right. And I've written in my first book, what I learned in therapy, your body will say what your lips cannot. And and I know you know all this, but when we study energy, what is this? This is the seed of your personal expression. Yes. Of who you are showing up as.
Right.
I went to 2 energy healers before I believed in energy healing, and now I've studied it. And both of them, without knowing a thing about me, said, "What are you doing for a living?" And they said, "You're lying. It's like a crying within. You're infected. You're ill. You're sick. There's malaise in what you are saying and doing." And it was really true. Didn't want to believe it, but of course it was true.
Isn't it wonderful, though, what a gift when you find someone that can, crack open the egg and expose the truth.
It's such a gift. It's such a gift. Yeah. And there has to be a readiness to hear it,
Well, I'll be curious to find out what you have to say about money, because, one of my coaches said, how you do money is how you do everything. And I do this thing with the 5 money personalities, and it all stems back to something that happened in our childhood. And it causes these disempowering beliefs. And so I have a course, and you'll love this. It's actually, I put my private coaching materials in the Smart Women's Academy. And when you come in, I say the first course you should do is my Unlock Your Financial Power.
Love it.
So I know you're talking about power, and I think a lot of it ties into our ability to handle money. Because I think women undercharge.
Oh, completely.
Yes, and they have they give their money away. I mean, there's so many things.
It's true.
Some women might hoard it, but when we can get comfortable with ourselves and heal all this stuff that you're talking about, then the part with money will begin to flow.
I agree with you. Power gap number 3 is reluctance to ask for what you deserve.
Okay.
There is so much data on how women struggle. And there are reasons for this. I do want to present a context about why we are this way.
Okay.
But can I just jump in there so that
absolutely.
Every once in a while, someone will say, "Are you blaming the victim?" And I want to make it clear, I'm not blaming the victim. I'm trying to lift us up from victimhood.
Right.
So, if you look, even there's research that showed, one study I was floored. It showed that right out of business school, 57% of men negotiated their very first salary and 7% of women. So why are these gaps here? Here's what, and in the book I interviewed 30 plus of the nation's top experts on issues and fields that are essential for women's success. But here's what I learned from Terry Real, who's a best-selling author and a really renowned couples therapist. And it's around patriarchy. So here's what I want to say. This is not to bash men, but here's the deal. We live, and I know you know this, but we live in a patriarchal world. And in a patriarchal system, we split ourselves in half, and we have defined in a very rigid way what the masculine is and what the feminine is. And I'm saying it with quotes. The masculine is strong, dominant, non-emotional, non-vulnerable, gets it done, assertive, confident. The female, the feminine, is soft, malleable, pleasing, accommodating, emotional. Okay? What happens in a patriarchal world, and I did a post and a video on what is feminism and why do so many men and women still hate it. Women can hate on women. Women can hate on strong women as much as men who are uncomfortable with it.
Right.
But in this patriarchal world, and there's other research, The Confidence Code is an amazing book to read, where the authors found that before age 13 or so, girls were on par with boys in terms of how they saw themselves as leaders and believing in their ideas and raising their hands for plum projects and assignments, for interest in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, for thinking they could be an astronaut. But starting age 13, girls go underground. Their voices get suppressed. They aren't as likely to raise their hand and say, I can do it. I can be the leader. Even this STEM issue, I think an Ivy League president came out and said, just girls aren't as good in STEM. And it's just wrong. And he, I think, was fired. But it's even been shown that teachers have an unconscious bias that girls are not good in science and math and engineering and shouldn't encourage them. I mean, it goes deep. It goes deep.
So while you're talking about that, Kathy, my girls went to Catholic high school. What happens when women are in an all-girls school? Does it change or not?
Interesting. I don't have data on that, but a lot of women that I've worked with who've been at all girls schools, it's very uplifting. They feel they can do anything. They're in an ecosystem where they're not suppressed, but you're overlaying Catholicism to it.
Oh yeah.
We won't go there. I'm not Catholic. I'm Greek and right. Italian, but I'm sure you have a lot to say, and I'm sure they have a lot to say about the place of a woman in the world, right? Yeah. So the important thing to understand is we didn't come out of the chute with these challenges. They are culturally and societally and institutionally and organizationally sustained and encouraged and exacerbated. So I know you see this in everybody you talk to. If you want to make a difference in the world, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can intervene individually, organizationally, institutionally, societally. My sweet spot is individually, or one to many where I can do that deep work. But the thing I love most is I can, you talk about how you do money is how you do everything. I say how you do LinkedIn is how you do your career and your work. I can look at someone on LinkedIn in about 5 minutes and I can see things they don't want me to see, that they're hiding, that they're insecure, that they don't have a compelling story about their work. And you need this in your entrepreneurial life just as much as you need, in your business. If
Right.
you can't speak about your amazing talents and gifts, and that's gap number one, not recognizing your special talents, abilities, and accomplishments.
Mhm.
Here's what I see. Not only do
Taught
women
as women not to brag. Boys can
don't
brag,
brag, that's it.
right?
But yes,
And
and
it's such a, yeah.
there's a wild underpinning to this. So I have this thing called a career path assessment, which now something like 70,000 people have downloaded. And I've seen thousands of these. And this is what I start with when I work with someone. It's got a lot of fantastic questions, but one of them is, what are you special at? How do you stand up? You cannot know how many women leave this blank, or they leave platitudes. I don't know. I'm good at listening. Here they're at the UN, helping, whatever. And they're talking about, I don't know what I'm good at. But worse than that, if they can say what they're good at, they don't want to say they're great. They will not say that they are great. And I'll say, look at what you just told me you did in the past 6 jobs. You don't want to say that you're great at business development, turning fading businesses around, mediation, managing complex systems. Why don't you want to say you're great? And they say, because someone could say I'm not. And I say to them, if you were a man, this would never occur to you. Mm-hmm. So I want to say this. Some people a few people have said, are you asking us to behave like men? And I say to them. If you think courage and bravery are the domain of men, you are mistaken. I'm asking you to be a brave and courageous woman. But to do that, and to your point earlier, I'm an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. It ain't easy. It's not easy. And you know what? People think that when you're in the flow, it's like playing. It's not playing, it's work. You've got to have hard conversations. You've got to have strong boundaries. You've got to fire people, so I think that people get confused. They say to me, should it feel like I'm never working a day in my life? No, that's not what it feels like. If you're really doing it right, you're going to bump up against challenges.
Right.
What do you think about that? Do you agree with me?
If
you are running a successful business, mm-hmm. It is not always a walk in the park. It's not always perfectly fun and not always feeling in the flow. You're going to have to stretch.
Oh, right.
And stretching is not comfortable.
When a challenge comes up, and to take it, go for it, because if you do make a mistake, that is the gift. That's where you learn and grow. But staying back and never doing it. I mean, think about that. If you're so afraid you won't try it, think of all the things you would miss out. I mean, anyone who's listening, they can look back in their life when they've taken a risk and when they haven't. Right. If you're afraid, get some support. And that's where a mentor, a cheerleader, you have to make a list of all the people in your life that are going to help support you.
Right.
Your community. It could be a family member, having a coach, being part of some kind of community is so important, because it is scary to go out and do it on your own. It is. The voices that we hear first are going to be our ego, or, our voice of fear is the voice it's going to be the loudest. It's going to show up first. And then we're going to start self-guessing ourselves. So we have to learn how to get past those things.
And, power gap number 4 is isolating from influential support. Mm-hmm. So in the book, I interviewed Sylvia Ann Hewlett, whose research shows that women have 3 times as many mentors as men, but men have twice as many sponsors. And for the people that don't know
the difference,
yes, let me tell you, a mentor is someone who is in the fabric of your life and is 10 steps ahead of you and is excited to give you advice, counsel, be a sounding board and give feedback. A sponsor is that plus this. They are powerful. They're influential. And tons of research shows that women, Judy Robinette, who's my sponsor, and a mentor and everything else, shows her book, How to Be a Power Networker, shows that women stay in the same room at the same level. So for instance, look, we all want to join entrepreneurial groups where, people are just starting out like us. But if that's the only room you're in, if you're not networking with people who are rocking it and powerful, you don't move ahead as fast. You need people who will open doors for you and give you connections that you can't get on your own. So, 70.
And Kathy, I want to ask you something about that, because it would be very scary for someone to move into that. But, when I was working at Ameriprise, I raised $10,000 sponsorship for American Express for the Women's Economic Club. That's what it was called back then. And I remember I went in there and they all thought I was a vice president of American Express. And they were like just rolling out the red carpet and everything. And I remember I walked out of there and I thought, we see ourselves so differently than others, where some people, they talk about fake it till you make it or whatever. Maybe a lot of men do that. I don't know. Maybe they were taught that, but we are so vulnerable as women and we see ourselves differently. And so somehow on this show, let's tell those women not to be afraid that, everyone is like that. Every single person who's taken that first step, and there's probably women in that room too that see themselves differently. I mean, the person on the stage who's leading may be very vulnerable, but they just do it anyway. Is that true?
That is so, so true. And, I connected with an amazing woman in Australia, Polly McGee, who helps entrepreneurs grow through a spiritual lens. And she, and I agree with this, doesn't say fake it till you make it. She says be it until you are it. Mm-hmm. What I love about that is when we are faking things, and I know that's not what you meant. I'm just trying to really make our words be very powerful.
It's just an old
when
saying.
You're faking, you're an imposter, and you're faking and it makes you weak. But when you do that scary thing, so can I talk about that for a minute?
Absolutely.
If you're really reaching the highest heights, you're scared out of your mind. Right. That doesn't go away. What you don't want to do is stop because you're afraid. What you want to do every day, every week, every month is do the thing that makes you say, if I can do that, I can do anything. So everybody who's listening, like here's a few for me. When I became a therapist, the first time I was in an internship at my university, Fairfield U, there was a time you had to do therapy behind a two-way mirror, and there was a team of people critiquing you. I literally thought, I'm either going to pass out or have a heart attack, but I'm not going to have to do this as I'm waiting to do it. It's scary, and it's scary to do therapy for the first time with someone, and it was domestic violence, and I did it, and I made a few mistakes, but they weren't horrible, and I passed with distinction in that master's program. I literally walked out and said, if I could do this, I can do anything. And I remember the second time was I wanted to be on TV, and I put it out there, and all of a sudden I get a phone call, and it was Fox Business News back then. And they said, can you be here in 2 hours? It's the satellite office in Connecticut. I remember like running around literally like my head had been chopped off like a chicken. I had one stocking on, one stocking off. And I thought to myself, why did I say I wanted to do this?
Right.
Why did I want to do this? But I did it. So what you want to do is realize you're going to be afraid and do it. And you know what? If you bomb it, and there have been times, Katana, haven't we bombed things? I mean, you go, okay, wow. You don't make yourself a loser. You don't beat yourself up. You say, okay, let's dimensionalize what didn't go right here. Was it the wrong opportunity? Was it that I wasn't prepared? So you move through.
That's where we learn and grow. I think, we have to slow down. One thing I wanted to share that Louis shared is that multi-millionaires, they share with their colleagues when they have a mistake. And because he did a survey like you did, a huge one, where the middle class, they keep it a secret and they don't share because they're embarrassed, and they don't realize that the wealthy, these people that have like $10 million, $30 million, they share their mistakes, and then they have this network they can support each other.
Love it.
And I think that was so amazing. We're taught, don't talk about it, keep quiet,
And I think maybe part of that is, and I'll listen to that interview, when you are very successful in your own eyes and the eyes of others, you're not afraid to be vulnerable. I mean, some of the most viral posts I've ever had, 8 million views, 3 million views, I'm coming out and being vulnerable. Like one was 6 toxic behaviors that push people away. How do you recognize them in yourself and change them? And I whipped it up, threw it up there on LinkedIn. Whoosh, off it goes. And I thought, people are going to yell at me. Are you telling me I'm toxic? People wrote, oh my goodness, I'm toxic. I'm reading your list and I am toxic. And my family says I'm toxic. So actually, it is that vulnerability that people really respond to. So if you're in business and you think it needs to be all veneered, that you're all perfect, you know, you're missing a lot of opportunities to connect with real people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even doing the show in video, switching from
I can see my light from my windows come crossing. You know, it's not perfect. None of it is perfect, right?
But I did it for about a year, and I said, we're just going to talk on video, but we're not airing it. You know, we're just going to toss it. And I did that.
It is brave to do it live, Katana. It's brave to do it live.
Yeah, it changes things, but it makes it so much more interesting. It's a totally different experience.
I can see that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for my own show. It's great.
So we touched on one.
The power gaps.
And I just want to remind, all of these are in your book, and people can go deeper with this. You know, we only get so much time on this show. So tell us how, what you want to cover today. We covered 4.
Yes. Can I read them? And
yes, I'd love that first, because some people are note takers. And
okay, great.
Go, wow, I really need to find out that one.
All right. And I'm going to give you the percent that said yes or maybe to having this gap in the survey.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
All right. And again, 98% of the women surveyed have one of these. So what I'd love the listeners to do is write down the 1 or 2 that go bing. The first is not recognizing your special talents, abilities, and gifts. 63% said they have that. The corollary to that is, I don't want to say that I'm great. I don't want to say it or think it. Number 2, communicating from fear, not strength. 70% have this. What does this mean? You weaken your message. You apologize for your message. You're in a meeting and you're ready to raise your hand and you go, I don't know if this is a good idea or if I'm on track. You broadcast to people, don't listen to me.
Yeah.
It's soft and it's not confident. Now,
and what was the percentage on that one?
That was 70%. Now, I do want to say, I'm not blaming the victim. I interviewed the behavioral science guys on my Forbes blog, and they showed gender bias is real. They showed a video of a female actress saying the exact same words as a male actor. And it was, I don't agree with the direction we're going here. Audiences, both men and women, viewed the woman, her perceived competency and her perceived monetary value dropped exponentially, whereas his just dropped a little. So our society does not encourage communicating from strength, but we can't sit back and let that happen. We have to, move forward on that. The third is reluctance to ask for what you deserve, 77%. And that is the highest one. And number 4 is isolating from influential support, 71%. That's I'm awkward and afraid to network with people who can help me. Number 5 is acquiescing instead of saying stop to mistreatment. By that, I mean sexual harassment, gender bias, gender discrimination. Do you know that the research shows that 8 out of 10 women will be sexually harassed in their career at some point? And 4 out of 10 believe they've experienced gender bias. I've lived through sexual harassment. And one thing I want to say here, I learned from Terry Real, the therapist I talked about earlier. I actually deleted an email that would have proven in a court of law that I was sexually harassed. I deleted it as I was leaving the company. And in the book, I talk about how now I know why, that I didn't know why then. Now, and 48% say they are experiencing this. I think it's much more. I think this is a case where you don't self-report. You don't want to admit it. Because, I know a lot about narcissism. I've studied narcissism. I've done a 6-part webinar training on when you're married to a narcissist, when your boss is a narcissist. I know a lot about it. so many people. We do need to talk about
So
childhood.
what is it? You said number 6 is?
Number 6 is, oh no. Yeah, no, I'm just still with the acquiescing to about the mistreatment.
About the harassment?
Well, yes, but what I'm about to say here is a lot of people were raised with controlling, manipulative parents, some of whom were narcissists. If you have that, you don't know how to say no. Your boundaries are not what they need to be. So you either attract negative abusive relationships or work cultures. You are attracted to them. That's all part of number 5. Number 6, and this one is the second highest, losing sight of the thrilling dream for your life. 76% said that's where they are. What that means is you came out of the school, college, and you had an idea for who you could be, for the impact you could make, and you bailed on that dream. And there's reasons we bail. Money, security. I have children. I've got to do the right thing. I bailed on my thrilling dream from about 2 seconds after I graduated. So that's 76%. And finally, the 7th one is allowing the past and past trauma to define you. And trauma can be, you were told by your boss you're stupid, you got fired, you got laid off, you were passed over in a promotion. They gave a guy 20 years your senior who knows nothing about your job. They gave him the job over you. We are traumatized by what's happened.
What was the number on that? Because usually with the past, it's resentment or regret that you carry around, or anger.
It's pain. Yeah. So people say it's 62%, but the part of that, it's much more than that.
Yeah.
And part of that low number is, I'm a therapist. I've lived in the realm of what trauma is, and trauma is on a spectrum. I mean, it can be you're in war and you come home and you're living with PTSD, but it can be the smallest thing that someone else would say, what are you so worried about that for? Like me getting laid off in a way that was so brutal to my ego and felt so unfair, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. That's trauma. And that can stay with you, and it shows up. And I can look at this career path assessment that women fill out. And often, part of this is a little energy work, and having been a therapist, I can almost see, even if they're not mentioning it, that there was some trauma in their life. And either
don't you find that most women have had some kind of trauma?
I mean, frankly, who hasn't?
Right. I mean,
the question is, have you healed from it? So what I love to say is this: you are what your childhood taught you to be, unless you unlearned it. And for many of us, we got messages, whether they were intentional or not, we got messages that hold us back. So here's a tip. I was watching Tony Robbins' documentary, I Am Not Your Guru. And I watched the whole thing, but there was one statement he made that literally I almost keeled over. He said to the audience, who did you crave love most from? And who did you have to be to get it?
Oh.
And immediately, Katana, I said I had to be obedient for my mom and brilliant for my dad. I can't barely even say that without choking up. And this is what I want to tell everyone. Mom's still alive. God bless her. She's been the most supportive, cheerleader for me. But I'm on the phone with her and I said, Mom, this is going to come out in my book. This statement that I feel I had to be obedient for you. What do you think? And there was this dead silence. And I thought, oh, I'm going to get it. And she said, yeah, I could see you would think that, because she was raised in a Greek, strict culture. You speak when you're spoken to, and you do not challenge authority. So the thing is, people, if you're raised to be obedient, you know what someone said? I was on his podcast, Caleb, the other day, and he said, interesting, I don't think you can be obedient and brilliant at the same time. And I said, you're right. I had never thought of that. But for Dad, I love him. He's in heaven, and he really was the light of my life. But I would come home with all A's and an A minus, like regularly. I had a 4.2 average out of 4 in high school. And he would say, oh, good for you. But what was the A minus? Now, he didn't mean it. He didn't mean for me to internalize I had to be brilliant, but it doesn't matter if he meant it.
That's so how did that affect you, though?
I had to be brilliant and I had to be obedient.
Wow.
I mean, until I became a therapist and then got energy healing and had my own therapy work.
Oh, I'm glad you included the whole thing with the energy healing, because I think all these experiences are stored in our body. That's why I use energy work when I do the money personality sessions.
It is.
You have to.
I always say when no amount of talk therapy or talk coaching helps you, it's in your cells.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. And I've studied Reiki and can I don't do the hands-on work anymore because truly I'm not as boundaried as one needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of take things on. What was your question before that? I forgot. I'm talking so much. I'm talking right over you. Oh, so I had to be obedient, which means I couldn't challenge authority. I couldn't say things that I knew were going to be upsetting. I mean, it really was a disaster.
Yeah.
And I overcame it. I did so much work, like to the point where, I'm putting out things on Forbes and I've mentioned this. The video I put up was a FaceTime live about feminism. Why do so many men and women hate it? Honestly, the hatred that came my way, 2 men and women were furious, but 2 men said, "Shut up, you dumb C word." Well, you're not going to say important things if you can't say stuff that gets people mad.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to overcome that. And the brilliant piece is that if you get your worth only through your grades and how excellent you appear, or vanity metrics, like a lot of people, they're looking at how many followers they have and, they're trying to validate that they're brilliant. That is a very crippling experience.
Right.
So I've done a lot of work on both of these, in every possible way you can imagine.
So are you saying women need to really be more authentic when it comes to, let's say, someone who is in corporate? Okay. Do they need to be more authentic, almost with their personal brand and standing up for what they believe in? Or do they have to stay within the corporate values and,
well, I would say
what they're being told?
I think you've answered your own. I think you've answered your own question.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of women come to me, they're very successful, but they're miserable. And that was me. If you're in an ecosystem that doesn't support your core values, and I just wrote a post on Forbes, 10 questions to ask to help you determine if your leader or manager is someone you should be following. Go to Forbes. You'll find it there. Forbes, Kathy Caprino.
And what is it? The 10 questions.
10 questions. 10 questions to help you know if your leader and manager is someone you should be following. And one of the key questions is, what are their values? Are they behaving in ways you actually want to emulate? Are you making excuses for them? Like, well, he didn't mean it. Why are you saying that? If he's a leader, every word out of his mouth or hers should be what they mean. Why are you making excuses? And, do they uplift people or do they tear down people?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, read this. And someone wrote on LinkedIn, I love this list. And
what was your response like on that one? I wanted to.
I get a lot of comments, some private, like, well, this is why I'm quitting.
Yeah.
Because, and somebody wrote, I flipped them and I'm asking myself, am I living up to these? Am I the leader I want to be? I mean,
right.
Don't you love it when people are brave enough to look at that? And she said, there's a few here I need to work on. But, when you put out a post like that, you're going to hear from people who read the list and realize, uh-oh. So to answer your question, do I think you should stay in an organization that flies in the face of your values? No. Why would you?
It's the hardest thing to try to leave.
But you know what?
For many people.
I tell people a lot, and I know you'll appreciate this. Now that we're entrepreneurs, now you had a year in corporate life. I had 18 years. I believe that. I had 18. You had 1, right?
My very first job. No, when I went to Ameriprise, American Express Financial Advisors, that was corporate. I was there 20 years.
Oh,
But we had two choices. You can be an employee or you can be independent contractor.
Gotcha.
And own your own practice. And we ended up owning the value. So I managed over $100 million, in assets.
Ooh.
And I owned my clients and I was able to, so that was totally different.
Total. That's entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So
it
my
was still
point
entrepreneurial,
is,
but I was in corporate, and there's, you still have that. And I just want to share this. I remember I had all these suits and I started out with the bow ties even, at the beginning, but I remember I was always wearing these suits and I had this desire to wear
burn them.
No, yeah, but to be able to wear like these exotic goddess outfits and everything, right? And it was so funny because I retired in 2007, and a few years later, I went to this event. It was, with Marianne Williamson and all these speakers, Celebrate Your Life, and they were selling all these, and I bought a whole bunch of them, and I started wearing them. That was around, and then I started taking people on trips to Costa Rica for retreats, women, and guess what I was wearing? Sarongs and all these wild, and it's like, it was such a different experience, but that was one of the most scary things I ever did, was leaving that kind of a career. I had to, though, because it was showing up in my body big time.
Wow.
So I took a whole year off.
So to leave, I know we're out of time. I think that if we can all be more entrepreneurial wherever we are, you're not stuck in one job. If you think you are, you're just holding yourself back. There are many jobs, many avenues, many pivots you can take.
Mm-hmm.
So be entrepreneurial and understand that. Most corporate people are scared of.
So we are at the end. I got so intrigued, I kind of lost it.
I love it.
And we're at the end, so that's good for you, dear. But we just want to make sure everyone can connect with you. And I know you have a free 7-day Power Boost Challenge workbook, because they're going to want to connect. So
wonderful. So it's just kathycaprino.com, my podcast, findingbrave.org. And you can read all about the book at kathycaprino.com/most powerful you book.
How wonderful.
Thank you so much.
I want to invite you into our community too, so we can share you easier. So
thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks so much. So great to talk to you.
Absolutely. So everyone, remember, come join us at joinsmartwomen.com. So until next show, please go out and live with more purpose, more passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.